All right. Good morning, Doug. We're going to talk today about some questions that some of our
Okay.
readers have, or not readers, our viewers have. Have a whole bunch of them, so we'll see what we can get through. First one is from Phil in Canada. He says, "Hey Matt and Doug, excellent discussions. I enjoy listening and thinking about the conversations during my daily commutes." Um, he said he'd like to hear our thoughts about relocation because he's looking for a better place to raise a family. He's in Canada. He's a tradesman, and he thinks if he moved, he'd have a lower quality of life. But he's okay with that if he can provide a better future for his kids and so forth. So his line in the sand has been vaccination of his children, and they're starting to hear the rumblings of that as something that might happen. So, what are thoughts on this guy who's got a family, trying to raise a family in Canada?
Yeah. Well, if your income is coming from working from day to day, you want to go to a place where your compensation is as high as possible. And the US and Canada are good that way. Now, here we are in Uruguay at the moment. I can't figure out how the average Uruguayan makes it because expenses are very high, costs are very high. Everything's expensive here in Uruguay. It really is. It's like North American prices, but the average Uruguayan doesn't own much. I guess it's the welfare benefits. But if you come down here, you're not going to get the welfare benefits until you're a citizen, and that takes, say, 3 years. So probably Argentina, out from that point of view. It's a question of having capital put together to make things convenient, I think.
Yeah, and I also think there's probably some things if you have to put together some capital. You probably should lower your standard of living now, so that you can accumulate more capital through savings. I mean, just do that as soon as you should have done it already, frankly. But
Yeah.
it's difficult, I understand. But the line in the sand is the vaccination of children, and I get that. He's just homeschooling. I think that's good. Rick Mayberry's answer. He's got to homeschool the kids.
It is the answer, and not only might it solve the problem from that point of view, but your kids are going to be way ahead of the game. I mean, look, a practical example of kids that are homeschooled are Tom Dyson and his kids. They travel all around the world, very, very low cost travel.
Shockingly low cost.
Shockingly low cost, actually. In my opinion, unacceptably.
Yes.
But nonetheless, the kids love it. I mean, kids like it, like everything. And how do they spend their time? They visit museums all day. They visit this and visit that and talk to people and so forth. And his kids are very together and far more knowledgeable and competent than the average, without the bad habits that kids. So I think that might be a double-edged answer.
Yeah.
You're going to get a bonus in addition to saving the kids from the vaccine, which, for all I know, might kill them. I mean, it's early days. We don't really know the long-term effects of this particular type of vaccine, but it's a very suspicious thing that the powers that be are so adamant about.
Especially for kids who are at basically no risk.
Yes, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
So,
But it does seem like the drumbeat for it is growing
Yeah.
towards the kids. I mean, I saw that Pfizer asked the feds today to approve administering vaccines to 5 to 11-year-olds. So I feel like it's going to happen.
and it's, I've read, but of course, is it a fact? I don't know, that the president of Pfizer is not taking the vaccine himself.
I wonder if his kids have it. I'm sure they don't.
I don't know. How do you get the answers to these questions?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Hopefully that's helpful, Phil. Next question here. It's from a mother. It says it's very un-PC, but she's a mom to a 6-year-old boy, and she asked, what skills do you recommend teaching him to prepare him for an America that is increasingly hostile to straight, especially white males?
Well, you shouldn't be afraid of asking a question like that. I
Nope.
mean, see, it sounds like she's questioning hesitant, which is not a good thing. But
The vaccine hesitant. She's questioning hesitant.
but you have asked the question. It's a very good question, and it's a correct question, even if it's not politically correct. You know, for years, I've been threatening to write a book that talks about what is the proper education for a person from early days through life. In other words, how do you become a Renaissance man? And that is what, since your kid is 6, you ought to direct your attention to, I think.
Yeah, and I think the homeschooling answer is the first thing, because it keeps them. You have more control over the indoctrination they're going to get, which is certainly has some hostility toward, straight white males. I can say that for sure, based on my son's experience and even a private school. So I think homeschooling is the answer there. But what are some specific skills, especially this young, to focus on with them?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know if we've discussed this before, but it's worth saying again. The 3 most important verbs in any language are be, do, and have. I mean, those are the 3 basic verbs. And unfortunately, most people seem to concentrate on have. I want to have a big house, I want to have a nice car, I want to have a pretty girlfriend, so forth. Well, those things are consequences of other things. They're not things to strive for in themselves. So how do you get them? You get them by doing stuff. You have to be able to create stuff. You have to be able to perform services, do. I mean, that's the important thing. So, and if you do enough things, hopefully that will allow you to be something else, which is actually the most important of these 3 verbs. But I think from the point of view of, in addition to instilling proper moral and ethical values and teaching your kid how to think critically, which most people don't even know what that means. Simple definition, as far as I'm concerned, is ask questions about everything and demand logical, complete answers. That is what critical thinking is all about. I mean, there's more to it, but that's a good one-sentence definition, I think. So, you can, you as a mother, if you're going to do your job properly, teach your child to think critically, and expose them to proper ethical and moral possibilities, and teach them to do things.
Yeah, and put safety. I like the whole Mike Rowe idea of safety third instead of safety first with a young boy. With a boy, that's definitely a much better way to raise them.
Absolutely, Mike Rowe is a solid guy.
Absolutely,
no question about it. But I guess from your point of view, forget about the have. Have is, it'll come, it won't come. It'll come if you do these other things, no doubt about it. But everybody concentrates on have. Forget about have. Just like forget about safety third.
Yep.
Not safety necessarily last, but maybe third.
Third is good.
Yeah,
I like the order.
It's reasonable. And talk about the do and the be.
Yeah, and I think, again, Tom Dyson's, what he does with his kids is a great example of this. I mean, they're always doing things, creating things, experiencing things, and the kids are incredible. I mean, they spent the night when they were going through Denver, they stopped and stayed at our house. All 3 of the kids, remarkable. I mean, really amazing, frankly. They're doing a fantastic job with them. So,
yeah.
But I think if you just get him out of a system that can corrupt him, or where he can be exposed to the corruption, I think that's the most important thing, is to keep him from the public schools, especially, or the government schools, as Rick would say.
Yeah, I agree, because not only are the teachers, psychologically screwed up and intellectually incompetent, but you're putting them in a class with 30 other young yahoos who have been indoctrinated and have all kinds of bad habits. So all the reason in the world.
Okay. Stefan from Belgium says, I'd really like to know Doug's opinion on the Green Pass, or whatever name countries are giving it, and especially how he is going to cope with it. This is the vaccine passport concept. So by now it should be clear that the global elite is trying to force every world citizen into registering, and that it will be a red or a green light for participating in life and traveling. So let's see. So how is Doug going to cope with this? Will he go along and start taking a 6-month repeated injection to remain free in his daily life? Or does he think, this all might collapse on itself?
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen. I've got intelligent friends, people that, I'd otherwise hang out with that are reasonably thoughtful, that actually believe in this vaccine and all that. So, no, I think they're less intelligent, and they think I'm less intelligent too. So it's really a loggerheads type of thing. But how am I going to deal with it? Well, regrettably, I'm 75 goddamn years old. So unless Ray Kurzweil is right sooner than he thinks, I suppose I could get away with taking the vaccine and increase my convenience level in the world. But medical issues apart, I mean, I don't even want to take a chance of all these nasty things that can happen to vaccine takers happen to me. That would really inconvenience my life and make it unpleasant. What am I doing? I guess is the answer to the question. I'm not trying to dodge around it. Is I don't like people telling me what to do. I mean, it's really that simple. I don't like to take orders, quite frankly. I don't particularly like to give orders either.
No, you don't.
No. So, I think the only way that, from my personal point of view, that you can relate is between equals. I don't like to have to kowtow to the people that think they're above me, and I don't like to boss around the little people below me. I like to relate as an equal, and if I can't relate to somebody as an equal, I don't.
Rather not relate.
I'd rather not relate. So anyway, what am I going to do? I'm not going to take their damn vaccine. I can imagine circumstances where it might be the most intelligent thing to do. But listen, I'm fortunate in that I'm in a position where I don't have to deal with people in the outside world. I mean, here in Uruguay, on this farm where we are, I've got people that will go shopping and get this and get that, and friends in Punta don't mind coming out here for a barbecue in the country. So I can kind of dodge the question because I can afford to. And the same thing when I'm now in Virginia. Was less possible actually in the People's Republic of Aspen, which is one reason why I bailed from there after many years. But I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, basically, so I think the way to cope with it, though, that for most people, is to be as disconnected from the levers that could force you to do it as possible. I think that's the best way around it. But I think you have to decide. You have to understand you are giving up some of the participation in normal life. I mean, if you're not going to get a green pass or vaccine passport or whatever, you are giving up some of it. But that's a choice you have to make. Where's the line in the sand for you? You have to have a line.
There's a friend of mine he's an Italian that lives in Romania actually right now, and every once in a while he sends me a video of giant demonstrations in Europe of people that are against this. And oddly enough, these whipdog Europeans are rising up, but I don't see any demonstrations like that here in the U.S.
Nope.
You think there are any, but the mass media are...
I think one of the things about Europe is that there are a lot more people populated in smaller areas versus the U.S., where people are spread out all over the place. So in the concentrated areas are usually they're left-leaning areas where people are in compliance with it. So I think you don't get that great concentration of people who are dissenting in one place that would be more likely to engage in a demonstration. I also think that Americans are, they're just like we were talking about. We're at a quarantine here for 10 days. Upon arrival in Uruguay, we're like, quarantine's not so bad. We just, watch some Netflix and, mess around or whatever. And I think that a lot of Americans are just like, yeah, it's fine. They don't see themselves as, they're not the protesting type. They're not the demonstration type.
Yeah, perhaps not. And anyway, quarantining here out at this farm is a very different thing from quarantining in a little one-bedroom apartment.
It is. It is. I don't know if we would be doing anything differently, frankly, if we weren't under quarantine. So, yeah, I just think what people have to do is you need to disconnect from the systems as much as possible. Like, I know there are a lot of people that have, been working on their own food production, for instance, because then let's say you can't go to the grocery store. That's a huge line that, might happen. It's possible where you need this scan a QR code to go to the grocery store.
Yes.
You have some food on hand. You have food that you can produce. You have friends who are producing food. Then maybe you'd be better off that way. But the bottom line is, if you have a job and you work for a company, then they can force you to do it. If you rely on the government for money, they can easily force you to do it. If if you need to use public transportation, then they can easily force you to do it. So I think it's just trying to put yourself in a position of empowerment so you're less likely to come down to that. And of course, having capital does help.
It does, and having as big a base of intellectual capital, knowledge of all types, helps as well. There's other types of capital other than just gold coins. So,
Okay.
anyway, it just thought passed through my mind. Timothy Leary was actually right during the 60s. I don't know how many of our current listeners are even familiar with Timothy Leary, but he was a Harvard professor who got very involved in the drug movement during the 60s and 70s and 80s. And he coined the phrase tune in, turn in, tune in, turn on, drop out. And of course, the turn on was take drugs. And I don't see that as being an answer, but tune into the problem and drop out of ordinary society. Well, he was onto something there, but that middle part of how you do it by turning on where, you're living in an alternate world. Okay, you're living in an alternate world, but it's a fake world because it's just in your head. But then again, maybe everything is just in your head. So.
All right. So Bill from the U.S. asks, what do you value above everything else?
Oh, I'd say personal freedom. If I was, money, no. Possessions, no. Value friends. Have less and less of them as time goes on, it turns out. I'm more and more discriminating, quite frankly. Personal freedom, I don't know.
I think personal freedom is it too, which is why I feel like, why the choice between taking the vaccine and and potentially not having your freedom reduced is compelling to some people. I think, but ultimately, you're not free personally if you're required to have medical treatment in order for that freedom. Freedom.
Well, it's very clever on the part of these people to go the medical route.
Yeah.
As a way to
control everything.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. So recently, I don't know if you saw, but Robert Kiyosaki came out and said that he was expecting a huge market crash in October. And this readers or viewers asking us, do you expect a massive stock market crash in October?
Well, October has historically been a bad month for the stock market. I don't know why, but maybe Robert's right. Certainly the market's way overpriced. Look, it's recently come out that there's more trading now in options, stock options, than there are in the stocks themselves, because there's more leverage. But, first of all, trading itself is really, really stupid unless you happen to be a really good professional trader, who don't grow on trees, incidentally.
Which you're probably not.
Probably not. No. People that are trading in options, speculating in them because they give more leverage, they're a wasting asset where time is against you to start with. Anyway, people are trading. It's like, one thing after another is saying, this has got to be the final top. Well, this is the most recent indicator of the final top.
Right.
I don't know. I wouldn't bet against Robert's guess on October at this point. In fact, I've got to get short. Just owning resource stocks isn't enough because they're also stocks.
Yep.
And past recent crashes, they've gotten washed away before they came back too. So.
All right. Juan from the U.S. asks, what's your opinion, Doug, on cycles, such as fourth turning theories and things like that?
I really like Strauss and Howe's books. There are two of them. Generations was the first one, and The Fourth Turning is the second one. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot to that. And cycles in general, yeah, they're all around us. The seasons are cyclical, day and night is cyclical. It's yin and yang, where it goes from one to the other. So, yes, I think there's a lot to do. The market itself is cyclical. It goes high, too high, and it goes low, too low, then it recovers. So, yes, cyclicality is all over in life. And I think it's interesting what they've come up with the not just simple pendulum swing back and forth cycles, but well, it's like that phrase that's become popular. Hard men make for,
hard men make for soft times make for weak men.
Weak men
And make for hard times.
Hard times make for
Hard men.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I think I got that right.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm not sure.
anyway, people can look it up. Google's your frenemy.
Yes. Okay. All right. Let's see. What's your take on why socialist Scandinavian countries are among the first to free their people from COVID-19 tyranny?
Well, to start with, I'd say that Scandinavian countries aren't really socialist to start with, because socialism is a system where the means of production are owned by the state. And the means of production aren't owned by the state in Scandinavian countries, or frankly, owned by the state almost anywhere these days. Almost everywhere today, the means of production are owned by private entities. They're just controlled by the state. They're thoroughly regulated by the state and highly taxed by the state. So there aren't any real socialist countries in the world today.
Just a lot of fascist ones then.
They're all fascist. There aren't any communist countries except for North Korea, I guess. Cuba, yeah. Can't think of
Venezuela?
any others. Yeah. Not completely.
Yeah. Okay.
But, so, okay. Why are the Scandinavian people are confusing, incidentally, in that question. I'm not trying to be pedantic, but I think it's an important point to make. You don't want to confuse a socialist country with a welfare state, which the Scandinavian countries definitely are. They've got extremely high taxes and
lots of benefits.
Lots of benefits, but they're quite socially constrained, I think, too. But I've never lived in a Scandinavian country. I've talked to Scandinavians. Some of them like it, some of them hate it, frankly. But socially constrained because you got to play the game. Anyway, what was the question?
Why do you think that they have opened up from, like, they eliminated all? I mean, Sweden didn't really ever go along with this, and then recently
Denmark is,
and same with Norway.
Yeah. Why? I don't really know.
I don't know either. I think
actual reason
I think that Norway and Denmark and Sweden are connected in many ways. I mean, I know most Swedes can speak Danish and Danes can speak Swedish, and so I think that
they can kind of communicate with each other.
Yeah. So when they see that Sweden is open, and didn't undergo this, that has to be really hard on the Danes, to see that that's happened and not. And so I think that perhaps the pressure of Sweden's not participating in it all swept across the Scandinavian countries. That's my best guess as to why that would happen, because it's in their face and people they know and understand.
They share a common culture in many ways.
It's my best guess. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Well, and what's funny is that, or not funny at all, but is not far from there in the Baltics, where they have actually really embraced these COVID restrictions, fully rolled out in like Lithuania, for instance, these green pass, and it's super restrictive for people. So it's not far away, and but totally different cultures, and they have fallen to the tyrannical rule of COVID-19. So.
Yeah.
So next question, Doug, is what is your favorite historian? Or I'm sorry, who is your favorite historian?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Edward Gibbon, who's just a historian of the Roman Empire. And so why do I like Gibbon so much? And why should you actually read him, even though his book was written in about the time of the American Revolution, more or less, six volumes. And I haven't read all 6 volumes. I read the first couple volumes. And why do I really like Gibbon, and why do I really like that book? It's actually a laugh riot. I mean, he's got great literary style, very quotable, and he's got a very wry sense of humor that comes out all the time. I like that. And the other thing is that he actually interprets things and attributes things to characteristics in people's personality and so forth. So the reason why a lot of, it's like that great rock and roll song, don't know much about the Middle Ages, just look at the pictures and turn the pages. It's because it's not very interesting just to look at names of rulers and he did this in this year.
Nice.
Okay, next thing. This is... it's not very interesting, but so a good historian is one that interprets things and interprets them thoughtfully and intelligently. So Gibbon's number one, and it's fun to read, interesting to read. And
From Dawn to Decadence.
right by
Buzan or
Barzun.
Barzan?
Yeah, and oddly enough, that's a great book.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, just his knowledge. I'm
Yeah.
just shocked by the way he's able to. I bet he just sit down and wrote it, and he didn't, not researching it. He just got it all in his head, and it just comes out of him.
It kind of seems that way because he wrote that book when he was in his 80s.
Yeah.
So, the guy was really kind of a phenomenon. And as far as his interpretations, I've actually got to read that book again because it was so good. It's about, 600 pages?
Yeah, it's pretty long.
Pretty long.
Yeah.
But I'd like to read it again, and that would be another one. But a lot of economists are actually historians too. I mean, these are two. Most people that claim they're economists today are just they're just number crunchers, and they don't describe the way the world works. They describe the way they think the world ought to work, or the government tells them it ought to work, or whatever. But good economists are also, there's a lot of overlap between those two disciplines. So Murray Rothbard is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Perfect example. He's a, great historian, but he's best known as an economist. And our friend Gary North, also, he's very good. Of course, Gary has certain peculiarities as far as, his religious beliefs are concerned. But, if you bear that in mind, it's very well worthwhile reading. I don't know if I can think of anybody else.
The lady who wrote Proud Tower and
Yes, and wrote The Distant Mirror and Guns of August. Barbara Tuchman.
yeah, that's right.
She's a very good writer. Who else?
There's a book that I read. It's more an economic history. I think the author is Robert Gordon, and it's basically what was the name of the book? It was about it was an economic history about the rise of American productivity and then its decline, basically going from like 1870 to roughly 1990 is a period he covers, and it's incredible some of the little factettes, as you would call them, that you can collect from this book, talking about how how electrification just exploded in the U.S. How and all these different private companies set up trolleys in every major city on the eastern seaboard and did it all within about 2 years. Like, we can't build a road today in 10 years.
No,
but
impossible.
these private companies did it in 2 years in basically every major city in the eastern seaboard. And so lots of really great things like that come from that. So it's very well researched.
Yeah, and of course there's that famous picture of Fifth Avenue in 1903 where there's one car and everything else are horses and buggies, and then 10 years later there's like one horse and buggy and all the rest is cars. Fantastic change in a short period of time. I don't know if that happens in the U.S. anymore.
No, that certainly doesn't seem to. Okay.
Anyway, it seems to me that most famous historians are gloomy because I think most economists should be optimistic because you can see the tremendous, the ascent of man and so forth. Things have been getting better and better, but economists see that it's nothing but mistakes and stupidities and collapses and so forth. So it's kind of historians rather. So it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition between the economists and the historians from that point of view.
That's interesting because like Neil Ferguson is kind of a contemporary historian, but he's an economic historian. The British guy who's married to Hirsi Ali. And he is, I would say, generally more of an optimist as well, because he does do economic history. And I'm not putting him in the category of the best, but some of his books are interesting. He did this whole series on the Rothschilds, for instance, which was interesting. So anyway, he's kind of, I wouldn't put him in the top category though, but I do like him.
I really got to read Spengler because Spengler is
Never read Spengler.
Is notoriously gloomy, and of course that's just confirmation bias on my part.
All right. So this is a question about going to Africa, but we've done that before, so I don't really. If you want to answer that one again, young person going to Africa, it says you mentioned previously that if you were young you'd go to Africa. Where would you go and why?
Well, I give the same answer I've given before, which is depends on. Generally speaking, if you don't really know how to swim, don't jump into the deep end of the pool. Start at the shallow end of the pool. And the shallow end of the pool are countries that, I would take as a first choice Namibia, which is, I think it's one of the largest and one of the least populated. I mean, there's only like 2 million people or so in Namibia, and it's a giant country. And so I would actually start there.
Okay. Doug, what's the fastest you've ever driven one of your sports cars?
Well, I've had lots of fast cars throughout my whole life, except through a period when I owned a lot of Volkswagens, of all things. I would say 140 miles an hour. The first time I really went fast was actually, I got into a road race with the Ohio State Police. And I was experiencing white line fever. I was driving home on Memorial Day, really stupid time to speed, incidentally. But, I'd gone a night without sleep, the last night at school in Washington, D.C. So couldn't get to sleep and, I had to vacate the room. And so I was already kind of zonked out. And by the time I got to Ohio, because of when I left, it was midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that. It was, and was going along a little over the speed limit, like 75, 80. And I noticed there was a cop on the side of the road, and stupidly, I said, well, I'll put some distance between me and him. And after a while, and before I knew it, anyway, the answer to the question is, That Corvette, it was a 365 horsepower 1964 Stingray. I redlined it at 7,000 RPM in top gear, which correlates accurately to 140 miles an hour. So of course I totally outrun the cop and did a couple of U-turns on the highway. And stupid how I got caught and thrown in jail. But anyway, not serious. You know, you could do shit like that in those days.
Yeah.
And, you know, you got a fine and you skate.
Yeah.
But I didn't even go on your local license because the states didn't all have
Right.
agreements with
Connected.
each other.
Yeah.
So, and of course, you know, my Porsche twin turbo, I've taken that up to 140. But you know, the thing is that the consequences of speed and the stuff that happens, it's not linear, it's exponential. So going from, you know, 140 to 150, you're not just adding 7% onto the overall picture. You're, you know, yeah.
You're increasing your risk by 50% or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, it's like the square of everything
Yeah.
goes up. And so I'd say a number of cars. I've gone about 140, but you go beyond that. Now you're starting to move into the twilight zone.
Yeah, the fastest I've ever gone was but it was on one of BMW's test track in Munich, so it was more controlled.
Yeah.
You know, but I got the M5 there up to a little over 160.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was, but you know, that was as fast as I could get it going before the wall was coming, so I had to slow down.
But I think all my cars, I've, you know, tried to take them to the red line or close to it.
Of course you would. Yeah.
But cars today are much more competent
Yeah.
than they were back
Yeah.
then, actually, and they generally can go a lot faster. And the police are much more serious today, and the roads are much more crowded, and so
You really can't drive a car anymore. No, I mean, if you're on an open road, I mean, you just can't. It's just the risks are so high, not with the car in an accident, but just with getting in serious trouble. I mean, you go 20 miles over the speed limit in certain areas, and you're going to lose your license.
yeah,
Immediately, immediate suspension of license for a
yeah,
year.
you would. I mean, even when I was living in New Zealand, I had a Toyota Supra twin turbo, which was actually a great car, and you know, a lot of the back roads in New Zealand, there's nobody there, so I redlined that thing too. But if a police car had seen me in New Zealand, they're draconian. Well, they're draconian about everything now.
Yeah.
But even back then, they confiscate your car and they throw you in jail, and it's really, really serious. If you go above, like, let's see, what was the speed limit then? It was like 110K, which translates to about 70 miles an hour. But if you went over 140K, which amounts to about 90, I mean, you were just in deep trouble. Still that way, I'm sure.
Sure it is. It's not much fun. Yeah, it's not as fun to just drive around anymore as it used to be. That's for sure.
No, I mean, when in Germany, I mean, I was cruising. I had a Ferrari then, and I was cruising it at 100 miles an hour, or about 140K, 90, and so the German police pulled me over and the German police on the Autobahn, at least in those days, I don't know what they drive now, but it was a Porsche of all things. And so I pulled over, and the problem wasn't that I was going 90 to 100. That wasn't the problem. The problem was I was driving like an American. Pass a car, pull back in the right lane. Pass a car, pull back into the right lane. I said, no, don't do that. That's why he pulled me over. Told me not to do it.
You're being too courteous with your lane usage.
Exactly.
That's funny. All right. So next question here, asking about, parallel systems. He says, let's see. When it comes to creating parallel systems, take, for example, Pirate Chain and Armada.com as a way to accept crypto payments for your goods and services. If the goods and services are what create value to any system, if we are to create a parallel system, would it be essential that we create all new organizations that provide our needs as a sort of matrix? Essentially, he says I might want to reframe his question a little bit, but what I think he's asking here is, the great thing about dollars is that everyone takes them almost everywhere.
Yeah.
And, obviously these cryptocurrencies are only really will become truly useful when you don't have to go from fiat to crypto. Maybe, use it as a speculation, maybe use it as a, to buy the limited things you can buy with it. But then ultimately you need to go back to fiat to really be able to use it in the world. So to have a parallel system, you have to everyone has to be willing to accept the currency, the crypto.
Yeah. I guess the market will solve the problem. Because if somebody wanted to pay me in crypto today, I guess I'd take doggy coin, or Doge, as they call it. Does it have any value whatsoever for anything?
I mean, it's hard to say. I think that it has value because people have decided it has value.
Yeah, but it can't be used for anything, can it?
Well, no, but you could argue the same is true about, 5,000 or 6,000 of the cryptocurrencies that are out there. They can't yet be used for anything. But I don't know. The thing is, people have to be willing to, who sell goods and services have to be willing to accept crypto in order for it to work. And, we actually did, there was somebody in our Telegram group who would you call it a knife smith? I don't know what you call that, but he's a knife maker, and I bought a knife from him with crypto. So, I'd love to purchase goods and services with cryptocurrencies. I'd love to do it.
Well, I don't personally use crypto. I own crypto as a speculation, but I don't use it, because I don't use a cell phone, for one thing. If I can possibly avoid it. I don't know. I don't think I can really speak to that, except we got to see how things evolve.
Well, I think necessity is the mother of invention. So if the dollar collapses, if faith is lost in these major fiat currencies, then that is what really creates the window of opportunity for cryptocurrencies to really be accepted. It's when people are seeking out something more stable.
Seems to me, though, that right now, Bitcoin is kind of the numeraire. It's the go-to cryptocurrency. But I'll speculate that in the future, currencies that can't be traced, that are private, genuine cash equivalents, will be. So what would that be? Things like Monero,
Pirate Chain, and Darrow is a new popular one that started gaining momentum. But I'd say between those three, and there could be a whole other other ones that pop up that are more useful in some way. But ultimately, I agree. I think it's because that's going to be I think the alternative to fiat is one driving force, and the other one is going to be that you don't want everything being tracked. You'd like to have, be able to make private, transactions.
Well, and ideally, you and John Hunt, especially if you can find a couple of teenage girls to do the grunt work.
You have to have read his books to know what he's talking about here, because otherwise teenage girls sounds like you're talking about something else.
Right. No, I'm talking about Paladin coin and Paladin token in Assassin, mainly, is where that occurs. So get a copy of the novel Assassin. You'll be happy to do. It's quite good, in my opinion. And it talks about Paladin token, which is a special purpose token which becomes very popular in the novel. And perhaps we can put it into reality. And the reference to the two teenage girls is they both become billionaires because they
are incredibly talented hacker-like developers.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Next question here. Speaking of crypto, from Benjamin in the UK, how do we feel about the coming war on crypto from the powers that be? I think it could be bad times ahead for crypto investors.
That's why you've got to have your own file that can, you can have a file of 5 people, but it's better if it's a file of 500, and better yet if it's a file of 5,000 or 50,000. And then you can, You have your own economy. Of course, you can't completely get out of the state's economy, because if you own real estate, if you don't pay their taxes, they'll confiscate it from you and so forth. But still, you can do a lot of things. And probably you're going to use either crypto or gold coins or silver coins to settle transactions.
Yeah, I mean, I think there clearly is cracking down on cryptocurrencies. I mean, forget about the China thing. I think that's totally overblown. I mean, and that we've heard that China's banned it a dozen times in different ways over the last several years, and they just had another ban on it. And it seems like they strangely could be, because they banned earlier this year crypto miners, and now they're having all these energy shortages there, and it could be that ban had more to do with conserving energy because they weren't producing enough, and they could forecast that they were going to be short of energy production, and the best way to do it is make it look like you're cracking down on this huge portion of energy consumption, which does not add to the well-being necessarily of its residents. But I think in the U.S. they're going to be cracking down on it more and more too, as the dollar becomes more in doubt. Like if the dollar were strong and stable, these cryptocurrencies would not have any. People would not be as interested in them.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So
they're going to crack down, but
yeah,
it's not going to kill them. You can't kill them.
No, you can't. I mean, I'd like to think that when the government promotes its Fed coin and wants everybody to use it the way they use checks and credit cards, you use Fed coin on your ubiquitous smartphone, that it will actually draw attention to alternatives, and the crypto world will get bigger, even though they'll try to quash it so everybody uses their Fed coin.
Yep. And honestly, if the price action continues to be positive for cryptocurrencies, that's just that the loan drives more and more interest in them. And so the larger they get, the more people that hold them, the harder it is to crack down on it. So yeah, it's going to be like governments are going to do crazy things in the years to come, no doubt about it. And that's unavoidable, but I don't think they'll be able to squash crypto altogether. They'll make using it more difficult in certain areas, but it'll also it'll be easier to use, and it'll be more ubiquitous, and more people will be willing to accept it for goods and services.
Yes, and perhaps governments which have grown like cancers in the last century, far beyond what they were in the 19th century, where they were, a nuisance, but generally inconsequential. Now they're, giant and control everything. Maybe they'll be like, they'll experience something like Facebook, which, had a serious glitch in the matrix here the other day. I think, does everybody hate Facebook as much as I do? No, they must love Facebook.
No, I think most people actually do hate it, but they use it because everyone else is using it.
That must be it. How can anybody actually like Facebook or trust Facebook at this point? I'll have to talk to some men in the street and see if they have strong opinions about it.
Well, I mean, for Facebook, it's usually older people. Like my mom is more active on Facebook than anyone else I know, actually. And and then Instagram is for the younger generation, and then WhatsApp was mostly outside of the U.S. communication. But everyone got kind of screwed when that went down for that period of time. But my thought was, I saw a headline. So this is total. Someone asked about this question also in another place. So I'm gonna kind of bring it up. Like, what's the theory? Is there a theory on why on that whole Facebook episode, like what's really going on? And there are three interesting pieces of the puzzle. And one was that this whistleblower came out, and happened to be scheduled for a Senate testimony yesterday, the day after this outage happened. Also, there was this, obviously 6-hour outage, which was very strange in the way that it was done, because basically all the DNS records and others were just wiped out. It was almost like it just disappeared, and it was down for 6 hours globally, which is strange. Usually outages are more limited in nature. And the third point that's interesting is that I saw several references to the idea that 1.5 billion Facebook records, user records, were being sold on the dark web, were up for sale. So with those three things together, I guess, do you have any thoughts as to why, what really did we, because we don't ever really know what happens with anything in this world. So I wonder if you had any speculations.
I don't, except that I hate to wish ill upon anybody, but I do wish ill upon Facebook and its pals out there in cyberspace. They're all basically minions of the U.S. government at this point.
They are. So here's my theory on it. My theory, this is totally conspiracies. Okay, so you might not like them at all, but so number one was that maybe they recognized that they had a hacker in their system, and they could not figure out how to thwart it, and so they themselves decided to delete essentially access to all Facebook services to any party in order to try and isolate it and figure out what the problem was, because they recognized that they were being infiltrated to that extent. So, because that's only because they said it was they did it themselves, but it wasn't like a simple fat finger error that could be undone in a second. I mean, it was down for a long period of time. So that's my theory on that. I don't know if that has any merit, but that's the thought I had. And the other one is, and I'm not the only one who thinks this one, is that this whole whistleblower who basically is coming out asking for government regulation and happens to be immediately gets the Senate hearing, and then she shows up on Twitter and immediately she has a blue check mark, which is basically saying she's like a verified super user of Twitter immediately. Yeah. Seems like this is a setup. It seems like she's not a whistleblower at all.
Yeah, it's like you got good whistleblowers and bad whistleblowers
right
floating around today.
Right. So I wish ill upon Facebook, certainly, but I don't think that this person is actually acting against them, even though she says she is. So I don't know. All right. So next question is, why is gold and silver not going higher in price right now when there's a 30% higher inflation than most other things? Most other things.
Okay. The question really is gold cheap or dear at the moment? And here's the way I see it. During the early 70s, let's say gold was, it freed up from $35 an ounce, and then the U.S. government picked an arbitrary new price, $42.22 an ounce, which I think is still the official price, although it's completely academic. So gold has gone up, depending on what number you want to pick, 40 or 50 times in 50 years. Well, that's, that seems like peanuts to people that, see stocks go crazy and all this type of thing. But gold is actually reasonably priced relative to other things today. As a speculation, I don't see gold itself as being a particularly interesting speculation today. I really don't. It's reasonably priced. In other words, we used to say, trying to figure out what gold should be at, that said, well, you used to be able to buy a top quality men's suit for
$20 gold piece, right?
Yeah, an ounce of gold, right? Top quality men's suit. Well, yeah, you can buy a Browne for that much, but nobody wears suits anymore anyway. So it's kind of an academic question. I mean, absolutely nobody's going to wear a tie. But what do you pay for a top quality men's suit today? I mean, I think you can get a Hart Schaffner and Marx kind of a $500. I don't know. I don't buy suits, so
yeah. If you go up the ladder a little bit, you can definitely get more expensive than that. But I mean,
you can
$1,000. It's basically,
yeah, probably
even the highest end. Basically, it is again the gold piece. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, if you want to, throw money around, you can pay thousands for a Browne suit and so forth, and grossly overpriced.
I do have one sports coat that I paid almost $10,000 for.
Did you?
Yeah, it's really nice though.
Well, so maybe I maybe
I know you would never do that, but
no, I just couldn't do it. But so what? An ounce of gold? Okay, they used to say, well, dinner for two in a classy restaurant would cost you £1, but that's when £1 was a British sovereign, which was a pound before they devalued it. So now that same British sovereign quarter ounce of gold is worth $450 or something like that.
That's dinner for two, and even Aspen, which is outrageously expensive.
That's right. That's right.
So-
My friend Steve Goldenberg assured me that when you go to an Aspen restaurant now, it's going to cost you $300 per person. And that's not with buying expensive wine. It's just so. I don't know. It seems to me like gold is kind of. It's not undervalued. Put it that way. So maybe this is just one of these times after running up from 1,100 or 1,200 back. You might recall 10 years ago, people say, "Oh, maybe it's going to crash and go all the way back to 500 an ounce." So don't worry about it. I think silver is a better bargain than gold today as a speculation, frankly. But listen, you don't have to attribute this to the evil powers that be suppressing gold, which I don't think is a reality, frankly, for all kinds of reasons. I think it's just, kind of in that twilight zone where you got buyers and you got sellers and you got people trying to do this and trying to do that, but it's not like greatly underpriced or greatly overpriced at the moment. So don't worry about it. If you want to play with gold, play with the gold mining stocks. They are cheap because the average all-in sustaining cost, not the cash cost, but everything for gold mining stocks, industry-wide, is less than $1,000 an ounce right now to mine it. And gold is trading for $1,750. So in point of fact, gold companies are coining money right now, but nobody cares about that, it seems, because they're not tech stocks. In fact, they're like the polar opposite of tech stocks. They're 19th century choo-choo train stocks. So, I'm big on gold stocks, but not gold as a speculation.
Right. A savings.
Savings, different question.
Insurance, like that. Yeah.
Different question, yeah.
Okay. All right. Next question. We probably agree that the majority of humanity does not possess rationally objectivist and individualist approach to life, and instead is driven by emotions, herd mentality, etc. Mysticism, religion, collectivism, irrationality, etc. So I was thinking about ways of somehow making individual liberty a mystical and divine goal, consequently making it much more desirable for the masses. I would appreciate your take on this as potential flaws and practicality.
Ah, okay. It's kind of like fighting fire with fire.
Exactly. It's not a bad idea if you can figure out the angle with it.
Well, listen, of all the religions in the world, my favorite is probably Taoism. And so maybe Lao Tzu kind of beat you to it by 2,500 years, maybe. But yeah, if you can package something as a religion, it's going to need some other elements.
You need some rituals.
Needs some rituals, that's right. Needs some dogma. Although Taoism doesn't really have any dogma.
It's part of the reason why it really hasn't caught on.
That's right.
Although I love Lao Tzu. I mean, Tao is amazing, but...
Well, I think it's an interesting...
Yeah, I mean, if you're really trying to actually affect the the masses out there and really get them to move in your direction, then, I mean, you probably do need, these ideas do have to have more of an angle like that.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that you're fundamentally manipulating them when you do it. And
that kind of
goes
runs...
against...
Exactly. Yeah. So, interesting idea, but...
it's not for me.
No.
Yeah. But if someone else did it, I mean, I wouldn't get, I'd watch it happen.
Yeah, of
I'm not
course.
interested in manipulating him.
I'd wish him well, good intentions and all that type of thing.
Yeah. Doug, is there any hope for Argentina, or will it forever be socialist?
Yeah, I thought there was hope for Argentina at the last bottom, but so far I was wrong. And of course, there is one politician down there who's won 25% of the vote for his precinct, or
For congressional district, yeah, basically.
something like that.
equivalent of
Yeah. Well, you got to kind of change the way that the mob thinks. So I'm not overly optimistic. On the other hand, is this trend in motion going to stay in motion forever? That, Argentina descending into the gutter? I don't know. It's always cause. I thought Macri, who was a decent human being, not a libertarian, but a decent human being, I thought that he would have been, could have been, should have been reelected, but no. So I guess the bottom hasn't come for Argentina yet.
I think most people won't really change their ways and their point of view until they have to. So, if they can if it still can putter along,
Yeah.
then, and since they're able to still sell bonds a few years ago, it allows them to putter along a little longer.
Yeah, the union members will stay union members, and the descamisados, the shirtless ones who live on welfare, well, they want their welfare check. They don't want to see anything change. And, the deep state, they're pretty happy. They're living high off the hog. They don't want to see things change. So, but who can tell what will happen in the next total collapse? And you look at Chile, which was down at the hills, backward, little obscure mining province before Pinochet came along, totally reformed the place. And what did he get for it? He became an international criminal for, turning Chile from a shithole into by far the most prosperous country in Latin America. So.
And now they seem to be flipping back. And so nobody would have expected that. So maybe Argentina could turn because the unexpected does occur.
Anything can happen on this screwed up continent with the next election in any country. So it's just an unstable place, which is why any smart Latin American has money in Switzerland or the U.S. or someplace.
Yeah. All right. Next question is, hey, Doug and Matt, the first sensible book I read on investing was Harry Browne's Permanent Portfolio. In this, Harry split assets in equal portions between stocks, bonds, gold, and cash. Question is, did you know Harry?
Oh, very well. Harry and I were actually very good friends. We were very close. And I had a lot of respect for Harry, and he was a lot of fun to be with. Harry was actually a stand-up comedian.
Really?
He wasn't, but
he could have been.
He could have been. He was a funny guy, great sense of humor, and thoughtful. He was just a super guy. But in his later years, he kind of, Harry was kind of reverting to the mean, you could say. That's why he ran as president of the Libertarian Party twice.
Yeah.
And other things that he said in some ways, his best book, which was How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, he kind of recanted a lot of the things that he said in there. He said, he disavowed marriage in that book. Well, he changed his mind on it. He disavowed politics. Well, he kind of changed his mind on that. And he had good reasons for this. Harry always had acceptable, rational reasons for what he did. But, I don't know. I guess I answered part of the question. There must be more to the question other than did I know him? Yes, I did.
The other question is, do you think that his portfolio would work in the current environment?
Well, Harry would if he thought he was barking up the wrong tree, he'd change it. Now, the whole idea of the permanent portfolio is it's supposed to be a permanent portfolio where you readjust it annually based upon how the price, and mechanically, basically, so that there wasn't a lot of judgment in it. You had a program, you stick to the program. Gold goes high, you sell some gold. Stocks are low, well, you buy some stocks with the proceeds of the gold. That's basically the way it works. But look at what's in that permanent portfolio. Stocks, they're in a hyper bubble. You really don't want to put money in stocks right now. Yes, you're not supposed to have judgments about the market. But bonds, hyper bubble. Would you really want to buy bonds now? Cash, it's going to be subject to rampant inflation. I don't know how Harry would revise it now in light of the fact that we're not living in the before times anymore.
Right. We're not bound by any sense of reality at all.
Yeah. So I think he might modify it, but I don't know how. Because there's almost no place you can run and hide anymore.
All right. Here's somebody from Germany who says they left Western Europe for the Eastern Europe, and where things are different, but they have no problem with topics. They have no problem with subjects that you guys have in Germany and the West. And looking at the West, especially France, UK, and USA, he thinks that it's dead. A dying empire is likely to go full steam ahead into conflicts and civil war, he said. So when can we expect the things to get really bad in the West and in Western Europe? Which was civil unrest and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, when? Well, you know what they say. If you're gonna predict what's gonna happen, don't predict when it's gonna happen. I mean, that's also predict often.
But you could argue the U.S. has already fallen into civil unrest. We had the BLM riots last year. I mean, doesn't that qualify?
My personal view is that the pot is likely to boil over in the next 6 months for any number of reasons. And I don't know what it's going to look like when the pot boils over, or who's going to align how, and what are the military and the police going to do exactly? I mean, well, they're basically going to follow orders because they want their paychecks, and they're used to doing what they're told with the chain of command. That's just the way it works. So, I don't know, but if the pot doesn't boil over in 6 months, then I'll be happy to spend the northern summer back in the U.S. as opposed to here when it'll be getting cold again, like it is now. That's why I'm wearing this ridiculous Mr. Rogers sweater.
I like it.
I know. After this is over, I've got to go out and get some exercise and pump some iron to stimulate my...
Shake off the cobwebs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But listen, if there was a way I could place a direct bet, the next 6 months are going to be very turbulent. And of course, problem when you place a bet like that, how do you define very turbulent?
It's chaos, I think, and so it could be driven by markets, the market collapse, or maybe Robert Kiyosaki being right about that.
Possibly.
That pain goes up. I mean, certainly if the feds start doing raids on mothers who spoke up at PTA meetings,
yeah,
I mean that might bring people out into the streets in a different way.
Could be a political collapse in Washington of some one nature or another.
Maybe they'll abandon post, and the fastest Jeep driver will take over the country.
Yes. Yeah, all kinds of things can happen. So for the next 6 months, feeling like I do, I'm happy to be down here in quiet, peaceful, somewhat backward, out of the way Uruguay.
Well, I'm certainly happy to be here. Next question from Carl in Sweden. Gentlemen, do you believe there is a globalist conspiracy, or is it just a complex web of actions and human reactions that make history play out the way that it does?
Yeah, well, my standard response to the conspiracy thing is, hey, I can't even get 4 friends to conspire which movie or which restaurant, well, when you used to see movies and when you could go to restaurants at a night. So how are you going to get hundreds of, rich, hard-boiled sociopaths to agree on anything? I mean, that was my general argument to conspiracies. But what's happening today seems so orchestrated, so well coordinated, it almost has to be a conspiracy where these people at top are being intimidated or bribed or... Listen, maybe it's true.
It does seem uncanny.
It does. It does. Will we ever find out the actual truth?
No, and I think the point is to me is, what difference does it make for what you do here and now? I mean, it's interesting to understand it, or to try and, when people like me certainly are drawn to these conspiracy, ideas, but point of fact, it doesn't seem to make any difference,
No, because whatever the reason for it, conspiracy or stupidity or something else, they're doing it. So
it's happening. Now, what are you going to do? That's the question.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to capture Klaus Schwab and Henry
Right.
Kissinger. And,
Just a little waterboarding, we might be able to get some answers.
yeah, I mean, that's right, a little bit of waterboarding. I mean,
And it's a perfectly okay, apparently. I mean, that's what they told us.
that's right, that's what they say. So,
It's not torture.
yeah, I'd like to
I saw the Justice Department memo on it specifically. It's not torture.
yeah.
I'd like to know. I would like to know, and I'm going to keep trying to understand it. But I also think, too much time on that is a huge distraction
Yeah.
from, well, what can I do in the here and now, in the place where I am, to make my life better?
But you know what? You're absolutely right. I totally agree. But as far as getting the answers from these people, maybe they actually give us the answers because, like really, hardcore psychopaths like Hannibal Lecter and
Yeah.
people like that, they like to tell their victim what they're doing before they do it, so they can see the terror in their eyes and so forth.
Yeah.
And these people are kind of like that, like Klaus Schwab telling you you'll own nothing.
Right.
And
build back better. And I mean, like,
Yeah.
how is so I saw for Biden gave, some speech from whatever studio set he uses the other day, same place he got the injection. And on the window behind his left, which is not a real window, it has stenciled on the window, build back better. And it's like, it's weird for everyone to be using those phrases together. I mean, it really is, it makes you think that there's coordination. There is.
Yeah.
Use that same language even. It's weird.
Yeah, there's something strange going on. I hope we can find out, just because it's intellectually interesting to see what these crazy chimpanzees are doing.
So I think this is a good argument for the simulation theory, though. Like this level, like if this is a game, or whatever, this is called a game, then it makes sense that you would have this global conspiracy. Like, wouldn't that be a better game in the end? And they are all using the same language. It wouldn't be too hard to have, have different phrases for every country. All the Anglo countries using Build Back Better seems to make it's a lot easier for the developers than having to go and write scripts for each one. I don't know. I mean, it seems to make sense to me that way, but.
Well, you can make an argument for a conspiracy with the fact that these people all share a roughly similar abnormal psychology, so they kind of think the same. They hate each other, I'm sure. They don't trust each other, but they kind of think the same. So.
Yeah. Okay. Will the euro fail faster than the U.S. dollar?
Yes, I'd say absolutely. Americans don't keep up with what's happening in the rest of the world typically. But my understanding is that the European Central Bank is in terms of what it's doing and the number of euros it's printing up is just as reckless as the American bank is. But look, if the US dollar is an IOU nothing, which is an accurate definition of what the US dollar is, the euro is a who owes you nothing, because it's not backed by any government with taxing power. So I think it'll blow up, and the European Union will blow up. I think it's very nice that England exited it, but maybe Italy will be next, or maybe any country will be next for all kinds of reasons, because they just decide for whatever reason they don't want to take orders from these people in Brussels.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's going to fall apart. It absolutely will.
Okay. Christian says that he likes it when you share your knowledge on ancient Greece. So when you weren't sure about that yesterday. Or
I was just like I said, I was just kind of verbally exploring some thoughts without having, really thought them out. It's just, but thank you.
And he says, maybe he said, perhaps you could talk about how close it was to a market anarchy prior to 700 BC, and did it maintain this near anarchy-like status once it got out of the Bronze Age, or no?
Well, I think what you're referring to is that, it's been determined that there was such a thing as, it's now called the Bronze Age collapse all over the Eastern Mediterranean. There were wars and burned cities and just general chaos. And
the sea people?
Yes.
Showing it, who were mysterious people from nowhere?
Yeah, came, like something out of a Conan the Barbarian novel, where
Right.
barbarian hordes come and loot and pillage. So this all happened around the year 1200 BC, which, incidentally, is about the time that the Trojan War occurred too. So, okay, so civilization basically collapsed, and there was speaking to exactly the question, there was the Mycenaean civilization in Greece, big buildings, real civilization, and it collapsed. And then Greek civilization went through a dark age, as did a lot of places in Eastern Europe, Eastern Mediterranean, until things started recovering about the year 700. That's when, let's see, Solon of Athens, he's famous for, the laws and organization and so forth. He was actually about, was he 700 BC? Yeah, I think so. Not 600. But things started recovering, and, writing started up again, and poetry and all this type of thing. So,
Was it a market anarchy before that, as he was saying?
well, I hate to use anarchy inaccurately. And when you have a collapse, such as happened during the Bronze Age collapse, and then later the Dark Ages in Europe, it's not anarchy, it's chaos. And they're two totally different things, and those two words are often conflated and used interchangeably, and they should not be. I mean, anarchy is not chaos, it's a system without governmental rule. I mean, it's market rule. So,
Well, we were talking about the book that I mentioned by Robert Gordon. It seemed like this period in the late 1800s and the very early 1900s was much more a period of market anarchy in the U.S. than any period I have enough knowledge about to know about, because the building out of electrification, it was just done. Right?
Yeah.
Or people just said, let's electrify these houses and these roads, and they just did it.
didn't have to ask permission
Right.
of anybody. You just, if you wanted to start a business and sell stuff, you did it. And the U.S. government, they had control of some things, and they had soldiers and stuff like this, but they weren't an element in anybody's life. They didn't tax you. There were very few regulations, and so it was kind of as close to an anarchic situation as we can hope to have in this very imperfect world.
Even Gary North, when we talked to him, he's thought like it all started to go bad around 1905. Is the way he described it. So
with McKinley and Roosevelt and the start of the American Empire with the Spanish-American War and all the rest of it. Yeah, it's quite, and it was the period of the most and fastest progress economically in world history, probably.
Exactly, which is why I recommend that Robert Gordon book. You can look up the title for it. If you want to really learn about the economic history of that period, I think this guy did a remarkable job with it. Doug, what do you think about the Fed minting a $1 trillion coin? First of all, it wouldn't be the Fed that would do this, right?
No, it would not. It would be the U.S. government. Two different things.
The Treasury does it, right?
Treasury, which is not the Fed. And they do that because they have the legal power to mint a coin, quarters, dollars. Well, why not a $1 trillion coin? So
and then they'd go deposit in the bank, and then the Fed would essentially create the money, the digital money, I bet.
Yeah,
right?
it's kind of a really clever workaround, okay? But it's the type of workaround that banana republics use.
Well, we're basically there.
Yeah, we're pretty much there. So, it's a disastrous idea, which would have been laughable if we were using gold for money, and the government had nothing to do with money, quite frankly, which it shouldn't. I mean, money should be a purely market phenomenon, just like schools should be a market phenomenon, and roads, and almost everything else the government does.
And healthcare.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Bad idea.
Bad idea.
Clever, though.
Clever. That's right.
I mean, this actually came from Krugman. Wasn't Krugman the guy who first floated the idea?
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it. He's the one that also said it'd be wonderful if the Martians were invading, because then he had some reason why it'd be
Yeah,
wonderful.
it'd be a big boost for GDP.
Yeah, it's like war is wonderful. It gets people working again.
All right. Okay, what are the top 3 to 5 countries for a COVID refugee family to move to find freedom, stability, and prosperity?
Top countries. God, so which country is not crazy at the moment? And I don't know of any that.
We talked about the Scandinavian countries.
Scandinavians, of course, yes, right.
I mean, there are some Eastern European countries that you see, some like Serbia and Georgia and
Poland, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might be okay. I understand that of all the Central Asian countries, Uzbekistan is doing by far the best, and that might be a possibility. Interesting. Lots of Oriental rugs available, and exotic cities in that part of the world, like Tashkent and Samarkand, and places that you read about in 19th century adventure novels. But where else?
Well, I mean, Mexico, Berwick has talked about, thinks that it's a relatively better place than
It
other
is.
places. So
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know. It would be nice if there was some Baedeker that we could read that monitors all of the continuing changes in this. Somebody's going to come up with that, because I think there's a real market demand for that. Somebody that has contacts in all these countries that can accurately tell you what's going on the ground.
right. Yeah, maybe that's something we could do within our file put together, because we have people all over the world and who can kind of report the latest restrictions.
Yeah, it would actually be a potentially profitable venture if we organized
We
it
could
as
do
a
it. We
business.
could maybe do it through a DAO and make the contributing file members shareholders in it, essentially.
Something like
through
that.
crypto. So
Yeah.
if you guys are interested in this idea, then
It's
go to the Telegram channel.
It's the type of thing that Paladin Coin would
Be ideal for.
would be helpful. Yeah.
So if you're interested in that idea, though, at all, helping to put something that together, and you have the ability to contribute to it, then definitely join the Telegram channel and let's start the discussion about it there. But I think the bottom line is that there is no place that is immune to the COVID hysteria.
No.
I mean, really no place. Even Sweden had some. It's not like they didn't do anything. Like they had some. They didn't go over the top with the restrictions, but they had some things.
Yeah, this mass psychosis is spread like the bubonic plague. I'm not going to say like COVID, because they're not comparable in any way.
All right. Question about the Netherlands. Someone was suing about this, the green pass, the vaccine passport there, and the case was rejected by the judge because they said it was not seen as discrimination, because people always had the option of testing, the regular testing instead. So curious as to what's your thoughts, if you have any perspective on the Netherlands at all and the situation there.
I like Holland. I like the Dutch people. I used to have a Dutch girlfriend. I think the place is great. On the other hand, Europe has been thoroughly infected by the virus of, collectivism and statism and socialism. So, what can I say? And of course, they say, and I think it's probably accurate, that by 2050, 30 years from now, a generation from now, Holland is going to be 50%.
Non-Dutch?
Yeah.
Non-Dutch of origin?
Muslims.
Yeah.
So you can forget about all the quaint Dutch customs and so forth. There'll be mosques everywhere and people making obeisance to Allah and so forth. So, hey, things change. Things change.
Doug, what do you think of Vanuatu as a second passport opportunity?
Well, I've been to Vanuatu 3 times, spread out over the years. And, It's a very, very backward country where you got the, the big numbers and the small numbers, and you got the
Cargo cult.
cargo cult, which really exists. It's still there, still active, and you got the bungee jumpers on a different island,
Yeah.
and and you got roughly 150 different native languages. It's a crazy place. So, passport, I don't know. Listen, it just depends on how many countries you can use it to travel visa-free. That's basically the
I think historically
criteria.
it's just sat within the the Australia and New Zealand, right? Like it gave you access to those countries, or at least Australia.
It must be more than that now, though.
Yeah.
But all the tourists that go there are all Aussies and Kiwis. So I don't know. It's government idea. So if you can get it cheaply enough, might as well, get it.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's not cheap. None of these countries charge less than $100,000.
Right. Let's see. Doug's synopsis of ethical living stated, "Do what thou wilt, but be ready to accept the consequences." Seems to be connecting to the heart of the matter that humans can do as they will and always have a choice, regardless of what the controlling agencies and governments would like you to believe. With that being said, we humans, and in fact all beings, seem to be held within a continuum of natural law. The best resource on this I've come across is the work of Kaibilan. I don't know if you know that name. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not either. So
At all.
This is within it. It stated the 7 hermetic principles, one of which is the law of cause and effect. And I find what Doug is saying to essentially be that you can do as you please. However, you always have to be subject to the natural laws, the consequences of your actions. So,
I have to look up Kaibilan.
yeah, let's see. I've never heard of
No,
it.
not,
But that makes sense, right? I mean,
it does. It's interesting. I mean, this could be, somebody that's done some serious thinking that just hasn't been promoted.
yeah, I'll look into it.
Yeah.
Let's see. A question. Did it come to Doug's attention that 3 weeks ago, an anarcho-capitalist, an economic called Javier Milei,
Yeah.
got 25% of the votes in Buenos Aires
Yeah, we
in the
just
primaries?
talked.
Yeah.
We just talked about that.
So yes, it did, and
I don't think it'll go anywhere. Although I hope it does, of course.
good. Okay, let's see.
I mean, there's a fair sprinkling of libertarians and anarcho-capitalists in Argentina. Probably more per capita than any other country in South America, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. It's classical liberalism has a better grip than any other country in South America by far in Argentina.
All right. Let's see. Next question.
But it's a teeny weeny grip.
Right. It's larger than any South American country, but not enough to make any difference at all.
Right.
All right. So let's see. My plan B is to move out of California. There's already a bill in works to make it difficult if you don't have the jab, and since we're under emergency order, that can go into effect ASAP. They're also going after the kids. My plan B is to move to the suburbs of Dallas. Everyone is living their lives there, not obsessed over Corona, and it's a good vibe. Plan C is Mexico or Costa Rica. Any thoughts on that? And what's Doug and Matt's plan B or C?
Well, I guess I'm not going to say that living here in Uruguay, and actually I like Argentina. Argentina's a lot more fun than Uruguay,
Yeah.
quite frankly. But it's inconvenient to be there at the moment. So I don't have like a plan A and a plan B. I've got like a plan A and plan A prime. And this is plan A prime, being here in Uruguay.
Yeah.
It's not, so I don't know. It gets this question. It's basically where do you go again, in the U.S. or out of the U.S. And we talked about out of the U.S. We need to do some serious. We need a serious input of information from around the world as to where to go, and it might offer. If we can get that together, it might present some interesting economic opportunities too. And in the U.S., I mean, it seems to me the best places are Florida and Texas.
It seems to be that it has been for the last year. That's for sure. Last 2 years.
And the Dakotas, I guess,
Yeah.
perhaps in that class,
Yeah.
but they're very windblown.
Yeah.
I don't know if Wyoming is good that way or not.
I know it's bad on the windblown's part.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're thinking about this right, though. Certainly Dallas, outside of the suburbs of Dallas, seems way better than being anywhere in California in terms of your freedom, and just the mentality of the people around there is going to be more aligned with, hey, leave us alone. It's our, not to say it's going to hold back the tide, because it does seem like the tide is going to wash over a lot of places, and I don't know if there's a way to avoid it.
Yeah. And of course, there's another thing that I've wondered about. I don't have the answer to. It's that as people leave places like New York and California, some say, well, all these horrible liberals are going to bring their horrible values and pollute other places. Yeah, but wouldn't it be more true that people that have good values are exiting those places and reinforcing
You would think so.
the new places?
You would think so, although I think that a lot of the liberals that are moving out of places, they don't like the inconvenience of it, but they don't, so they're moving just because of the lack of convenience, and a lot of them are coming from, a lot of them have jobs that are pay well and make them mobile,
Yeah.
So I don't
know which it is. Are the people that are making the chicken run, are they primarily right-thinking people or wrong-thinking people, as we would define them?
What'd you see in Aspen?
I'm
Wrong-thinkers.
not sure, because I exited. I don't know. I can ask my friends. All I know in Aspen is that my Friday lunch group doesn't really exist anymore, and my Monday poker group doesn't exist anymore, and all the people that are coming in are new ultra rich people. So I'm saying to myself, and I don't play polo anymore. So wait a minute, why am I here? It's expensive, and the winters are cold, and I prefer being here. So that's why I left Aspen. It wasn't because, but I don't know. I'd like to know what the sociological situation is in places like Aspen and what's that place in Wyoming?
Jackson Hole?
Jackson Hole, and lots of little towns like that, like Crested Butte in Colorado, where we often used to hike across the mountain. It's about, 15, 18-mile hike, something like that. Kind of a death march, because you're going up and down mountains. And, Crested Butte has gotten ultra double expensive. And all these similar places that have an ambiance the prices have gone through the roof. So who are these rich people? I mean, are they rich liberals of the type that you'd find in Silicon Valley, or I don't know.
I don't either. All right, let's maybe do one more question, and then we plan on doing more tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Derek from Canada says, I've been an employee in accounting for several years, but I am increasingly seeing the benefit of becoming an entrepreneur who is not dependent on anyone. Of course, you are still dependent on your customers. Keep that in mind if you're an entrepreneur. What kinds of skills make for a successful entrepreneur? Is there any advice you'd give someone starting out?
Yes, learn all that you can about absolutely everything. Do stuff, okay? Once again, we talked about this earlier in this. Forget about having stuff. That's a consequence, and it's not important, frankly. Pleasant, but it's not important. You got to do stuff, and you got to have as broad a spectrum of being able to do stuff as you can, and that will help you to be something good and decent, I think. And that's the answer to being an entrepreneur. If you can do stuff, people want you around.
That's right.
You're valuable. If you can't do anything, you're dead weight, and therefore you might wind up being dead meat, roadkill.
Right. I think being an entrepreneur, I mean, especially if you have a skill set in accounting, Every
Yeah.
business needs that skill set.
Absolutely.
So you just have to figure out how I mean, the biggest challenge you have to overcome is the employee mindset, which is that you basically just show up and you do the things that you're asked to do. And you have to change that to something where, you look for problems that you can solve that other people have. I mean, and looking for ways you can apply your skill set to solve those problems. And instead of essentially makes you fundamentally more proactive instead of reactive. As employees are reactive. This is the stuff you get, and you check in and you check out.
That's the key. Everybody's got a ton of problems. I mean, and all you got to do is have the skills to solve their problems, and they will compensate you for it.
Exactly.
Which is also a reason why you generally want to run around with rich people as opposed to poor people, because they have the same kind of problems, different but the same.
Yep.
And rich people are in a position to compensate you better. So, if you're stuck in the wrong class structure, the wrong town, get the hell out of there.
Yep. Yep. And yeah. So I guess we'll leave it at that for today then, Doug, and we'll be back tomorrow. More questions.
This is a lot of fun. It's
It's
nice.
more fun to be in person.
It is. It's nice to have a pleasant conversation to start the day. And now I'm going to doff my Mr. Roberts sweater and put on some shorts and pump some iron.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Doug.